In April 2023, 8 Metropolitan Police officers were found guilty of gross misconduct, 5 of which were dismissed. They'd all been members of a WhatsApp group known as Secret Squirrel Shit, which specialised in the sharing of discriminatory and offensive messages. One of the officers involved, PC Carlo Francisco, was the catalyst for the investigation. According to the Met, he was subject to an unspecified criminal investigation unrelated to the message group. His phone was seized during the investigation and searched, and the offending WhatsApp group was unearthed. However, Francisco had further associations than this one group. He'd also been sharing material one-to-one with Inspector Charles Ehikioya. 10 months after the secret squirrel investigation, Ehikioya's home was raided and his phone seized. Upon searching the device, obscene material was discovered, a Regulation 32 notice was issued, he was brought before a misconduct hearing and eventually sacked. This much you may already know if you've read any of the news reports online. What is strange, however, is that not a single news outlet reported the true extent of the material found on his phone. If they had, then you would have got a fuller picture of what a truly disturbed and depraved individual Ehikioya is. In this news report, the BBC identified the worst of Ehikioya's offending as being sharing jokes about Chinese people, sharing a sexist image of a Back to the Future film poster amended to say, "Back to the kitchen," jokes about sex with a girl with Down syndrome, and mockery of the late Duke of Edinburgh's car crash. The rest of their reporting has been devoted to Ehikioya's defence, namely that he is the real victim in all of this, that he has been subjected to racist remarks in other police officer WhatsApp groups, and that his offensive messaging was a stitch-up by the police to ruin him due to his position as head of the Met's Black Police Association.
I categorically deny the allegations made against me, and I am dismayed by the decision to dismiss me after 3 decades of dedicated policing service. While this decision is a personal attack, it will not silence my commitment to fighting for justice, equity, and reform within policing. I will explore every available option to challenge this dismissal, not just for my reputation, but for every officer who faces discrimination, retaliation, and abuse simply for standing up against racism.
But contrary to what the mainstream media will have you believe, offending minority groups was the very least of Ehikioya's disturbed messaging pastime. Upon investigation, he was found to have shared thousands of messages containing obscene and abhorrent content, including extreme pornography and snuff videos and images. For entertainment, he downloaded and shared videos of real-life horrific incidents, such as decapitation videos, violent sudden deaths, self-maiming, fatal shootings, and serious injury, all tagged with spiteful and callous epithets written by himself. Some of the content was horrific accidental deaths caught on camera, others were graphic police shootings, and some of them depicted people hacking off their own body parts. Taken together, they are a testament to a sick and troubled mind that went undetected for 6 years while he rose through the ranks of the police force to become an inspector. To prevent this video from being sent to YouTube's 18 certificate prison, I'm not going to detail the content that Ehikioya was sharing. All I can say is that he is a very sick man. If you are morbidly curious, then I suggest you take a look at my website, where I've uploaded a full transcript of this video with the relevant passages from the misconduct hearing that describe the content in full. Of the news outlets that covered this misconduct hearing, none of them properly highlighted the true extent of his file sharing. Instead, they all published the same sanitised news report, probably written by the Associated Press, downplaying the gravity of the material, while at the same time giving Ehikioya a platform for furthering his claims of racial discrimination. This includes the BBC, the Standard, LBC, the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, and even GB News. Ehikioya also benefited from the Professional Standards Department refusal to hold police officers to the same criminal standards as the rest of us. Not only did they fail to refer the case to the CPS, They initially refused to accept that Ehikioya's behaviour constituted gross misconduct. They even took the unusual step of issuing him with a letter granting him immunity from charges of gross misconduct. However, Ehikioya ran out of luck because, reading between the lines of the misconduct hearing, it seems clear that somewhere along the chain of command, somebody stepped in and demanded that Ehikioya answer for his malfeasance and face a misconduct panel, where they refused to honour the immunity letter and were only partially willing to wipe the defence clean. But he was forced to answer as to why he'd been sharing such vile content with another officer. His defence was simple. It was everybody else's fault except his. Inspector Ehikioya believes these WhatsApp exchanges to be a fabrication or mistakenly or falsely attributed to him by FBC Francisco, possibly motivated by hostility towards him for reasons including his race. Alternatively, he attributes them to those within the Director of Professional Standards, motivated by hostility towards him for reasons including his race and involvement in the Met BPA, or that they were created by persons unknown. Even when confronted with incontrovertible evidence submitted by a digital forensic expert that the offended material had originated from his phone, Ehikioya persisted with his defence. He implied that the investigator himself must have planted the evidence. If not him, then any one of the many MPS officers who supposedly had it in for him. The same officers, I might add, who had allowed him to remain a police officer for 28 years, promoted him to the rank of inspector, and had never once brought him before a disciplinary hearing. Ehikioya and his counsel submitted no evidence to counter the digital forensics. They submitted no independent forensic report, offered no alternative theory, nor did they bother to cross-examine the forensic expert. Instead, Ehikioya expected his claims of racial discrimination to be the full and final answer to his criminality, and the matter closed. A tactic that seems to have worked quite well for him in the past. In August 2020, 2 traffic officers stopped Ehikioya's vehicle after witnessing him commit several road traffic offences. Soon after, he got straight onto the emergency hotline that seems to have been installed between his home and the BBC news desk. "They are both clearly racist police officers," he said, pretending to be polite whilst falsely accusing me, without any evidence whatsoever, of having committed serious criminal and road traffic offences. All this despite the fact that both officers witnessed him speeding in back streets and then jumping a red light, which, in law, 2 officers witnessing a road traffic offence is enough evidence to bring a successful prosecution. The final comment he made to the BBC is the most telling. "The officers did not believe or did not care that I was an officer because I am black." This implies that the first thing Ehikioya did before fumbling for the race card was to pull his warrant card instead. Police officer diplomatic immunity. And in his mind, 2 officers' refusal to let him off because he was a police officer must mean they are racists. In any event, his technique seemed to work because he was never prosecuted for those offences. Nor was he disciplined for them either. Perhaps the Met were fearful of him detonating yet another race grenade, where he's ready to pull the pin at the slightest provocation. Prior to all this, in 2017, he took the Metropolitan Police to an employment tribunal, alleging that he'd been the victim of racism and victimisation by senior colleagues. This claim went on for 2 long years until January 2019, when Ehikioya suddenly and inexplicably withdrew it for reasons unknown. 5 months later, he was promoted to the rank of inspector, a position he kept for 2 years until the WhatsApp debacle finally brought him down. Officers raided his home at 5 a.m. to seize his devices. The press then dutifully reported this seizure as racially motivated on the basis that, well, because Ehikioya says so. "They seized my phone, my laptop, took them all away, kept them for a year and 22 days, and then returned all of them back. And there was no case to answer for criminal or any misconduct because they didn't find anything. There was never anything in my phone." That last statement was certainly true because Ehikioya had deleted everything. After all, he'd been given a 10-month head start with the secret squirrel shit investigation and had plenty of time to purge everything that could potentially incriminate him. In the civilian world, this is known as perverting the course of justice. In the police world, this is just another fringe benefit where criminal activity is downgraded as misconduct. You go to court and get a year in jail, they get management training. The Met Police alleged that none of the deleted messages could be retrieved from Ehikioya's phone, yet somehow they managed to count just how many he'd deleted. 357,000 in total, many of which he'd sent while on duty. Divided across the 4-year period the investigation spanned, this means that Ehikioya was sharing and receiving 244 WhatsApp messages a day. How did he ever find time to do any police work? Thankfully, the misconduct panel disregarded Ehikioya's defence for the pack of lies that it was and sacked him. Of course, no criminal charges were laid, no questions were asked as to how he sourced the offending material or what attempts were made to retrieve the deleted messages, and most significantly of all, nobody wondered just what depravity lurked among the 357,000 WhatsApp messages that Ehikioya was so desperate to destroy. The kindest thing you could say about former Inspector Ehikioya is that he is a degenerate. If I was generous, I'd also say he is a hypocrite too. As Ehikioya demonstrates, if you land in hot waters, you'll be thrown a lifebelt by the Professional Standards Department, who will attempt to rescue any drowning colleague, no matter how treacherous the waters. And most significantly of all, if you can induce the nation's press to go back to sleep and gloss over the true scope of your offending, while giving you a platform to stoke the eternal fires of racial disharmony, then you truly do have the makings of an inspector with the Metropolitan Police. Copper Stopper is out now in paperback. It's packed with essential guidance on hundreds of law enforcement scenarios, traffic stops, home visits, street encounters, interviews, arrests, allegations, and covering victims of crime. It's your ultimate defence to protecting you from them. Follow the links in the description to purchase a copy today.